In this question, you will be assessed on using good English, organising information clearly and using specialist terms where appropriate. Copper 2 oxide is an insoluble base. Describe, just going to underline that because that's our command word, describe how you could make crystals of copper 2 sulphate from copper 2 oxide. So first of all, describe means basically write a method. Okay, so write a method of how we would make copper 2 sulphate crystals from copper 2 oxide. They've given us one of our reactants here, copper 2 oxide. They haven't given us the other reactant, but we can work that out from our salt that they've given us, or what salt they want us to make. So the fact that it's making a sulphate, it means we must be using sulfuric acid. So I'm going to write this at the top so that I don't forget. Now, writing a method, I usually do that bullet point just because it follows a more logical sequence, really. And you can do this for your exam questions. You can structure your exam questions like that. That's no problem. So I'm going to start off by saying we are going to measure 40 centimetres cubed of sulfuric acid. And I'm going to put that into a beaker. So I'm going to pour acid into a beaker. And I'm going to gently warm that for about 1 minute. So 3, gently warm. Acid for 1 minute. Number 4, we are then going to add copper to oxide until it's in excess. Okay, so that word excess basically means until we've got too much of it. Okay. So we add the copper 2 oxide until we've got too much of it. It's really easy to see it when you're actually doing it because the copper 2 sulphate, the solution that you're making, is a lovely blue colour, and the copper 2 oxide is like a black solid. So you can see it forming at the bottom of your beaker. So it's really easy to tell when you've got too much of it or when you've got it in excess. And it's basically to make sure that all of the sulfuric acid has reacted, it's all neutralised. So I'm going to write on why we've done it. So it says add copper 2 oxide until it's in excess to ensure all of the acid has reacted or neutralised. Okay. Number 5, we then need to remove this excess copper 2 oxide. So we are going to filter, because it's a solid in solution, we're going to filter the copper 2 oxide with a filter funnel and paper. To leave just the copper 2 sulphate solution. So 6, we've got the copper 2 sulphate solution. Oh, sorry, I missed my 2 out there. Copper 2 sulphate solution. Okay, so that means when we've got copper 2 sulphate solution, it means that we've got copper 2 sulphate in water. And remember, the question's asked us to make copper 2 sulphate crystals. So obviously the word crystals means we want dry crystals. So we've got copper 2 sulphate in a solution, so we need to remove the water. So to do that, we need to evaporate the water away. Okay, so we've got copper 2 sulphate solution, and we're going to put that into an evaporating basin or evaporating dish. So copper 2 sulphate solution, pour it into an evaporating dish. and we're going to gently heat that over a water bath. So we're going to heat the water in a beaker, so it's like a water bath, and then we're going to put the basin on top, the evaporating basin on top, so it heats the copper 2 sulphate nice and gently. If we heat it too harshly, it could break down certain it could break down the copper 2 sulphate and release some toxic gases. So we're going to do it nice and gently. So we've got it. We've put our copper 2 sulphate solution into an evaporating dish, and then we are going to gently heat it over a water bath. That will give us copper 2 sulphate crystals, which need to be dried. So the last step would be to dry the copper 2 sulphate crystals and then we're done. If we have a little look at the mark scheme for this question, okay, it says a level 1 is for basic understanding, so you get 1 or 2 marks. It says there is a brief description of how copper sulphate is made. The knowledge is basic. The answer is poorly organised, and there's not with no specialist terms used. Okay. For a level 2 answer, which is 3 to 4 marks, there is a scientific description of the preparation of copper sulphate from copper oxide and sulphuric acid. There is a clear understanding. The answer has some structure and organisation. There's been some use of terms, but they're not always accurate. And then a level 3 answer, which is 5 to 6 marks. There is a clear and detailed scientific description of how to prepare copper sulphate from copper oxide and sulphuric acid, and how crystals are obtained from this mixture. So it says the knowledge of accurate information is appropriately contextualised. Detailed understanding supported by relevant evidence and examples. It's a coherent answer, and it's organised and put into a logical sequence, and the specialist terms are used accurately. So for this answer, the points on the mark scheme are: use a dilute sulphuric acid, place the acid in a beaker and warm it. Add the copper oxide in small amounts until there is an excess and no further reaction can take place. So that's when all of the acid has been neutralised. Filter to remove the excess copper oxide. Allow the excess water to evaporate and crystals of copper sulphate to form, and then remove the crystals. So we've hit every one of those points in the answer above.